The stars burned bright against the black sky when Princess Neera's shuttle began to shake. Warning lights flashed red across the control panel as her pilot fought with the controls. "Your Highness, we are under attack," Captain Vex shouted over the noise. "Unknown ships are targeting our engines." Neera gripped her seat as the shuttle spun wildly. Through the window, she saw 3 dark ships firing bright energy beams at them. These were not military vessels from any known empire. They looked rough and patched together, like ships used by criminals. "Send a distress signal to the fleet," Neera ordered. "The communication array is damaged, Princess. I cannot reach anyone." Another blast hit the shuttle. The lights went out for a moment, then came back dimmer than before. Smoke filled the air. Captain Vex turned to look at her with fear in his eyes. "We are going down, Your Highness. I will try to find a safe place to land." Neera looked out the window and saw a blue and green planet below them. According to the star charts, this was Earth, home to a primitive species called humans. The Valoran Empire had marked this world as under development, not ready for contact with advanced civilizations. The shuttle hit the atmosphere with tremendous force. Fire covered the windows as they fell faster and faster toward the surface. Neera felt her body pressed against the seat as they spun out of control. "Hold on," Captain Vex yelled. The impact came without warning. Metal screamed as the shuttle hit the ground and slid across rocky terrain. Neera's world went dark. When she opened her eyes, everything hurt. Smoke filled the broken shuttle. She could taste blood in her mouth. The emergency lights cast strange shadows on the twisted metal around her. "Captain Vex," she called out. No answer came. Neera unbuckled herself and crawled toward the front of the shuttle. Captain Vex hung motionless in his seat. She checked for signs of life but found none. The other guards were also dead. She was alone on an alien world with hostile ships somewhere above her. The princess made her way to the emergency kit and pulled out a medical scanner. Her left arm was broken and she had several cuts, but nothing that would prevent her from moving. She wrapped her arm in a support brace and took medicine for the pain. Outside the shuttle, she could hear strange sounds. Wind moved through what looked like tall plants. In the distance, mountains reached up toward the sky. The air smelled different from her homeworld, but she could breathe it without difficulty. Neera tried to activate the communication system, but most of the equipment was destroyed. Only one emergency beacon remained functional, but it would take time to modify it to send a message across space to her mother's fleet. As she worked on the beacon, she heard new sounds from above. The attacking ships had followed her down to the planet's surface. Their engines made a low humming noise as they searched the area. The princess grabbed what supplies she could carry and moved away from the shuttle. If the bounty hunters found the crash site, they would track her easily from there. She needed to find a place to hide while she repaired the communication device. The landscape around her was unlike anything on her homeworld. Large plants with green leaves grew everywhere. The ground was covered with smaller plants that moved in the wind. Strange animals made noise in the distance. Neera had never been alone like this before. As a princess, she always had guards and servants to help her. Now she was wounded and stranded on a primitive world with enemies hunting her. She climbed up a rocky hill, hoping to find shelter in the higher ground. Her broken arm made climbing difficult, and she had to stop several times to rest. Behind her, she could see lights in the sky where the bounty hunters continued their search. As night fell, the temperature dropped quickly. Neera had not expected this, and her royal clothing was not designed for such conditions. She found a small cave and settled inside, hoping the rock would hide her from their scanning equipment. The cave was dark and cold. Strange sounds came from deeper inside, making her nervous about what kinds of creatures lived on this world. She activated a small light device and saw that the cave was empty, at least for now. Neera worked on the communication beacon by the light of her device. The circuits were damaged but not destroyed. If she could find the right materials, she might be able to send a message home. The problem was that such materials would not exist on a primitive world like Earth. Morning came slowly. Mira had barely slept due to the cold and strange noises outside the cave. When light returned, she carefully looked out to check for danger. The bounty hunter ships were still visible in the distance, searching the area around the crash site. They had not found her yet, but they would expand their search pattern soon. As she watched, Mira saw movement below her hiding place. A figure was climbing up the rocky slope toward her cave. At first she thought it might be one of the bounty hunters, but this being moved differently. It was smaller and seemed to struggle with the climb. The figure came closer and she could see it more clearly. This was one of the humans that lived on this world. He looked young and strong, with dark hair and strange clothing made from rough materials. He carried tools and equipment that seemed very primitive compared to her technology. Mira considered staying hidden, but the human was heading directly toward her cave. Perhaps he had seen her light during the night. She activated her translation device and prepared to meet the first primitive alien she had ever encountered. The human reached the cave entrance and stopped when he saw her. His eyes were wide with surprise, but he did not run away or call out. Instead, he held up his hands to show he meant no harm. "Are you hurt?" he asked in his strange language. The translation device converted his words into Valoran. "I am Princess Nira of the Valoran Empire," she replied, letting the device change her words into his language. "My ship crashed and I am injured." The human stepped closer, looking at her broken arm and the cuts on her face. "My name is Ben. I saw the lights in the sky last night and the smoke from the crash site. I came to see if anyone needed help." Nira was confused by this response. Why would a primitive being want to help someone from another species? On her world, different races only helped each other when they expected something in return. "You should leave," she told him. "Dangerous beings are hunting me. If they find you here, they will harm you." Ben looked toward the sky where the bounty hunter ships continued their search. "Those ships don't look friendly. Have you been hiding from them all night?" "Yes. I must repair my communication device to call for rescue, but I need materials that do not exist on your world." The human studied her damaged beacon with interest. "What kind of materials?" Nira explained about the rare metals and crystals needed to amplify the signal across space. Ben listened carefully, asking questions about how the device worked. "I might be able to help," he said finally. "I work in salvage and electronics. There's a crashed military satellite about 5 miles from here. It might have some of the metals you need." Before Nira could respond, the sound of engines grew louder overhead. One of the bounty hunter ships was flying directly toward their position. "They found us," she said. "You must run. I will hide deeper in the cave." But Ben did not run. Instead, he looked around quickly and pointed to a narrow path leading down the other side of the mountain. "This way. We can reach the forest before they land." "We?" Nira asked. "I'm not leaving you here injured and alone," Ben replied. "Those ships look like bad news, and you need help." Nira stared at this primitive human who was willing to risk his life for a stranger from another world. In her empire, such behavior was considered foolish. Leaders made decisions based on logic and personal benefit, not emotion and moral feelings. But she had no choice. The bounty hunter ship was landing near the cave entrance. She followed Ben down the narrow path as quickly as her injured arm would allow. Behind them, she could hear voices as the bounty hunters searched the cave. They spoke in the criminal language common among pirates and slavers. They were angry about losing her trail and were spreading out to search the surrounding area. Ben led her through the forest with confidence, following paths that were invisible to her eyes. He moved quietly and quickly, stopping often to listen for sounds of pursuit. When her arm began to hurt too much to continue, he found a hidden spot among thick plants where they could rest. "Why are you helping me?" Nira asked as they caught their breath. Ben looked surprised by the question. You're hurt and in trouble. Why wouldn't I help? Because I am not of your species. Because helping me puts you in danger. Because you gain nothing from it. Where I come from, we help people who need help, Ben said simply. It doesn't matter where they're from or what they look like. Nira had never heard such reasoning before. In the Valoran Empire, actions were measured by their benefit to the Empire and to oneself. Personal sacrifice for strangers was considered a weakness that enemies could exploit. But as they continued through the forest, avoiding the search parties above, she began to see that Ben's knowledge of this world was keeping them both alive. His willingness to help had given her the chance she needed to escape and find the materials to repair her beacon. Perhaps there was more to these humans than the Empire realized. Perhaps being primitive in technology did not mean being primitive in other ways that mattered. The sound of engines faded as the bounty hunters moved their search to other areas. Ben smiled and pointed ahead through the trees. The satellite crash site is just ahead. Let's see if we can find what you need to call your people home. The satellite wreckage lay scattered across a small clearing in the forest. Twisted metal and broken circuits were spread over a wide area where the military device had crashed years before. Ben led Princess Nira carefully through the debris, pointing out pieces that might contain the materials she needed. Most of this is old Earth technology, Ben explained as he lifted a large panel. But military satellites use some rare metals for radiation shielding and signal amplification. Nira examined the wreckage with her scanner. The device beeped as it detected traces of the elements she needed. There is enough here to rebuild the communication array, she said with surprise. Your primitive technology uses materials that are quite valuable in advanced civilizations. Ben began pulling apart the larger pieces with tools from his pack. He worked with skill and efficiency that impressed the princess. Despite his simple equipment, he understood how the complex systems worked. How do you know so much about these devices? Nira asked. I've been salvaging electronics since I was a kid, Ben replied as he extracted a circuit board. My father taught me that everything has value if you know how to find it. As they worked, Nira found herself watching Ben more than the salvage. He moved with purpose and confidence, never wasting motion or time. When he encountered a problem, he found creative solutions using whatever was available. More importantly, he continued to show concern for her welfare. He insisted she rest when her injured arm began to hurt. He shared his water and food without hesitation. He positioned himself between her and any potential danger, even though she was trained in combat and he was not. This behavior puzzled Nira greatly. In her empire, such actions would be seen as weakness or foolishness. Leaders were taught to preserve their own strength and resources for times when they would provide maximum benefit. Ben, she said as they took a break from their work. What do you expect to gain from helping me? Ben looked up from the circuit he was examining. I don't expect to gain anything. You needed help, so I helped. That's how things should work. But surely you want something in return. Wealth, technology, knowledge of other worlds. Well, Ben said thoughtfully, I am curious about where you come from and what your people are like. But that's not why I'm helping you. Before Nira could respond, the sound of engines filled the air above them. 3 bounty hunter ships appeared over the forest, flying in a search pattern. Their scanners swept back and forth, looking for any sign of the princess. Ben quickly gathered the salvaged materials while Nira packed her equipment. They moved deeper into the forest as the ships began landing near the satellite wreckage. They will find our tracks, Nira said as they ran between the trees. Maybe, Ben replied. But I know these woods better than they do. He led her along a stream that would hide their scent and tracks. When the water became too deep to walk through easily, he found fallen logs that served as bridges. His knowledge of the local terrain kept them ahead of their pursuers. The chase continued for hours. The bounty hunters used flying scouts and tracking devices, but Ben seemed to know every hiding place and secret path in the forest. He took them through caves, across rivers, and up rocky cliffs that were difficult for the hunters to follow. During one rest stop in a hidden valley, Nira asked, "How do you know this area so well?" "I grew up here," Ben explained. "My family has lived in these mountains for generations. My grandfather taught me every trail and landmark when I was young." "Your family stayed in one place for multiple generations? Did you not seek to expand your territory or conquer new lands?" Ben looked puzzled by the question. "Why would we want to leave? This is our home. We have everything we need here." This concept was foreign to Nira. The Valoran Empire had grown by constantly expanding, taking resources from weaker civilizations. The idea of being satisfied with what one already possessed seemed impossible to understand. As night fell, they found shelter in an abandoned mining tunnel. Ben built a small fire using dry wood that would produce minimal smoke. He prepared food from plants he had gathered during their journey. "These are safe to eat," he assured her as he offered her some berries. "I've been eating them since I was a child." Nira tasted the food cautiously. It was simple but nutritious. "You have great knowledge of survival," she observed. "Everyone around here does. When you live in the mountains, you learn to take care of yourself and others." "Others?" "Well, yeah. If someone gets lost or hurt, the whole community helps search for them. If a family's house burns down, everyone helps rebuild it. If someone gets sick, people bring food and medicine until they recover." Nira found this difficult to believe. But what if helping others requires sacrifice from yourself? What if it is dangerous or costly? Ben shrugged. "Then you do it anyway. That's what makes us human." Over the following days, they continued their journey while Ben worked on repairing the communication beacon. He had no training in advanced technology, but he approached each problem with patience and creativity. When they needed additional components, he led them to an old military base where more materials could be found. When Nira became sick from eating unfamiliar food, he found medicinal plants and cared for her until she recovered. When bounty hunters came too close to their hiding places, he created distractions that allowed them to escape. Each time, Ben put himself at greater risk to help her. He never complained or asked for anything in return. His actions seemed driven by an internal code that valued the welfare of others above personal safety. "Ben," Nira said one evening as they camped in another hidden cave. "I do not understand your people. In my empire, we are taught that self-preservation and logical thinking are the highest virtues. But you consistently choose to help others, even when it endangers you." Ben poked at the small fire with a stick. "Maybe that's the difference between our peoples. We think taking care of each other is more important than taking care of just ourselves. But such thinking leads to weakness. If everyone acts emotionally instead of logically, decisions become poor and empires fall." "Maybe," Ben said. "But if everyone only thinks about themselves, what kind of empire is worth having?" This question bothered Nira more than she wanted to admit. The Valoran Empire was indeed powerful and successful, but it was also cold and calculating. People advanced through competition and political maneuvering rather than cooperation and mutual aid. On the fifth day, Ben completed repairs to the communication beacon. The device was larger and more complex than before, incorporating salvaged Earth technology with Valoran engineering. "Will this reach your fleet?" Ben asked as they prepared to activate it. "It should," Nira replied. "But the signal will also alert the bounty hunters to our location. Once we send the message, they will come for us quickly." Ben nodded seriously. "Then we better make sure the message gets through." They climbed to the highest peak in the area to get the best signal transmission. As Nira activated the beacon, its powerful energy output lit up the mountainside like a bright star. The message was simple: Princess Nira to Valoran fleet. Crashed on primitive world. Under attack by unknown hostiles. Send immediate rescue to these coordinates. Within moments, ships appeared in the sky above them. But these were not Valoran vessels. The bounty hunters had detected the signal and were converging on their position. "We need to move," Ben said, already gathering their equipment. But it was too late. The bounty hunter ships surrounded the mountain peak, cutting off all escape routes. Armed figures began rappelling down from the aircraft, weapons ready. Nira prepared to fight, but Ben stepped in front of her. "Wait," he called out to the approaching bounty hunters. "I want to make a deal." The leader of the hunters, a scarred alien with multiple arms, laughed harshly. "You are in no position to negotiate, human." "Maybe not," Ben replied. "But I know something you want to know." Nira stared at Ben in shock. Was he planning to betray her after everything they had been through together? Had his kindness all been an act to gain her trust? But then Ben continued speaking, and she realized his true plan. "The princess has family who will pay a much higher price for her safe return than whoever hired you to capture her. But they'll only deal with someone who hasn't hurt her." The bounty hunter leader considered this. "You think we are stupid? We know the value of a Valoran royal. Then you know that value goes way down if she's injured or if you have to fight a war with the Valoran fleet to collect payment," Ben said calmly. "But if you let me negotiate with her people, I can arrange a peaceful exchange that benefits everyone." It was a desperate bluff, but Ben delivered it with such confidence that even Nira almost believed it. The bounty hunters hesitated, uncertain whether this primitive human might actually have connections that could help them. In that moment of hesitation, the sky erupted with new light. Valoran warships dropped out of hyperspace directly above them, their weapons already charging for battle. The rescue fleet had arrived, and the real confrontation was about to begin. The Valoran warships appeared in the sky like silver stars, their hulls gleaming with advanced technology. Energy weapons powered up with a deep humming sound that made the air vibrate. The bounty hunter ships, which had seemed so threatening moments before, now looked small and fragile in comparison. Queen Thera's flagship descended toward the mountain peak. It was massive, easily 10 times larger than the bounty hunter vessels. Strange symbols glowed along its sides, marking it as a royal ship of the Valoran Empire. The bounty hunter leader looked up at the approaching fleet with fear in his eyes. "We did not know she was Valoran royalty," he called out desperately. "We will leave immediately." But the warships had already locked their weapons onto the criminal vessels. Bright beams of energy lanced out, striking each bounty hunter ship precisely. The alien craft exploded in brilliant flashes of light before crashing to the ground in burning wreckage. Princess Nira watched the destruction with mixed feelings. She was relieved to be rescued, but she also felt sadness for the loss of life. Months of traveling with Ben had changed her perspective on such matters. The royal flagship landed on a flat area near the peak. A ramp extended from its hull, and figures in gleaming armor marched out in perfect formation. These were the Royal Guard, elite warriors of the Valoran Empire. Behind them came Queen Thera herself. She was tall and elegant, wearing robes that seemed to shimmer with their own light. Her crown was made from rare crystals that could only be found on the Valoran homeworld. Power and authority radiated from her presence. "My daughter," Queen Thera called out as she approached. "Are you harmed?" Nira ran to embrace her mother, tears streaming down her face. She had not realized how much she missed her family until this moment. For several long minutes, they held each other while the royal guard secured the area. "I feared you were lost forever," the queen said softly. "When your shuttle disappeared, we searched every system along your route. How did you survive on this primitive world?" Nira stepped back and looked toward Ben, who stood quietly watching their reunion. "I survived because of him, Mother. Ben saved my life and protected me from the bounty hunters." Queen Thera turned to study the human with interest. Ben looked small and rough compared to the elegant Valorans around him. His simple clothing and primitive tools marked him clearly as a member of an undeveloped species. "You have our gratitude, human," the queen said formally. "Your service to the royal family will be rewarded." Ben stepped forward and bowed awkwardly. He had never met royalty before and was not sure of the proper protocol. Your Majesty, I was honored to help Princess Nira. She is a remarkable person. Several members of the royal guard exchanged glances at this informal response. In the Valoran Empire, one did not speak to royalty unless specifically asked a question. But Queen Thera seemed amused rather than offended. Tell me, human, what reward would you like for your service? Gold? Jewels? Advanced technology? Ben considered the question carefully. Around him, Valoran nobles and officers waited to hear what this primitive being would request. Many expected him to ask for wealth or power, as was common when the Empire dealt with lesser species. Your Majesty, Ben said finally, I don't need any reward for myself. But I would like to ask for something else. Speak freely. I would like you to protect my world. Earth is defenseless against advanced species like those bounty hunters. If other criminals or hostile empires discover us, my people could be enslaved or destroyed. Silence fell over the assembled Valorans. They had expected the human to ask for personal gain, not protection for his entire species. Such selflessness was rare even among their own people. Queen Thera studied Ben with new interest. You ask for nothing for yourself? No wealth or position? No, Your Majesty. I have everything I need on Earth. But my people deserve the chance to develop in peace without fear of attack from space. Princess Nira stepped forward. Mother, you should know that Ben's actions were extraordinary. He risked his life repeatedly to protect me, even when I treated him poorly at first. He shared his food and water when supplies were limited. He chose to help a stranger from another world simply because it was the right thing to do. The Queen's advisor, an elderly Valoran named Minister Korv, spoke up. Your Majesty, while we appreciate this human service, placing a primitive world under imperial protection requires significant resources. What strategic value does Earth offer in return? Before Queen Thera could respond, Ben answered the question himself. Earth doesn't offer strategic value in the way you might measure it. We have no advanced weapons or rare minerals. But we have something that might be worth more than those things. And what is that? Minister Korv asked with skepticism. We have the willingness to do what's right, even when it's difficult or dangerous. We believe in helping others without expecting payment. We value loyalty, courage, and compassion above personal gain. Princess Nira nodded enthusiastically. Mother, in the months I spent with Ben, I learned things about leadership that were never taught in our schools. Ben showed me that true strength comes from protecting others, not just advancing yourself. The human way of thinking is primitive and inefficient, Minister Korv argued. Emotions and moral feelings interfere with logical decision-making. Maybe, Ben replied calmly. But logical thinking without moral guidance leads to the kind of empire that creates bounty hunters and pirates. It leads to people who see others as resources to be used rather than individuals to be valued. Queen Thera raised her hand for silence. She had been listening carefully to the exchange, and Ben's words had clearly made an impression on her. Human, she said, you speak of values that our empire once held sacred. In our early history, Valorans believed in honor, loyalty, and protection of the innocent. But as we grew more powerful, we forgot these principles in favor of efficiency and expansion. She paused and looked around at her advisors and guards. Many of them seemed uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. Perhaps, the Queen continued, it is time for the Valoran Empire to remember what we lost in our pursuit of advancement. Ben of Earth, I hereby grant your request. Your world will be placed under imperial protection, and no hostile force will be permitted to threaten your people. Minister Korv looked alarmed. Your Majesty, this sets a dangerous precedent. Other primitive worlds will expect similar protection. Then perhaps we should consider offering it, Queen Thera replied firmly. An empire that protects the innocent is stronger than one that exploits the weak. Ben bowed deeply. Thank you, Your Majesty. This means everything to my people. But I have another offer for you, the Queen added. I would like you to serve as Earth's first ambassador to the Valoran Empire. Your world will need someone to represent its interests as it develops relationships with other civilizations. Ben looked surprised. I'm not sure I'm qualified for such an important position. You are more qualified than you realize, Princess Nira said. You understand both human and alien perspectives. You have proven your wisdom and courage under pressure. Most importantly, you have the moral character necessary to represent your people with honor. Queen Thera nodded in agreement. The position would allow you to remain on Earth while serving as a liaison between our civilizations. You would help ensure that contact between our peoples benefits both sides. Ben considered the offer carefully. He thought about his quiet life in the mountains and how much it would change. But he also thought about the opportunity to protect not just Earth, but other worlds that might face similar threats in the future. I accept, he said finally. But I want to make sure Earth develops at its own pace. We need time to prepare for contact with galactic civilization. Agreed, Queen Thera said. The Empire will provide protection and guidance, but Earth will maintain its independence and right to self-determination. As preparations began for departure, Princess Nira approached Ben one last time. I want to thank you again for everything you taught me. I will never forget the lessons about leadership and compassion that you showed me. You were already a good leader, Ben replied. You just needed to remember that strength and kindness aren't opposites. Will you visit the Valoran homeworld someday? I would like to show you our capital and introduce you to our people. Ben smiled. Maybe someday. But for now, I have work to do here on Earth. We need to prepare for the changes that are coming. The royal fleet departed that evening, leaving behind a communication array and a small diplomatic outpost. Ben stood on the mountain peak, watching the silver ships disappear into the star-filled sky. Earth was no longer alone in the universe. Humanity had gained powerful protectors and new responsibilities. The future would bring challenges and opportunities that Ben could barely imagine. But he felt confident that his people were ready for whatever came next. After all, they had something that even the most advanced civilizations sometimes forgot, the simple belief that helping others was always worth the risk. In the years that followed, Earth would become known throughout the galaxy not for its technology or military power, but for the moral strength of its people. And Ben would serve as a bridge between worlds, ensuring that human values of compassion and justice spread among the stars. The lost princess had returned home safely, but she had brought back something more valuable than her life, the rediscovery of principles that could transform an empire and change the course of galactic history.